This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is the World Today. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi, and these are your top stories. China promises 1 billion more vaccine doses to help Africa fight COVID-19. Calls grow for global vaccine equity as a new COVID-19 variant spreads across the world. And talks on saving the Iran nuclear deal resume, with Europe voicing optimism and Tehran pressing for sanctions relief. Well, let's start in Senegal. The 8th Ministerial Conference of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation has entered its second day in the Senegalese capital, Dakar. The forum focuses on deepening China-Africa cooperation in various sectors. On its first day, Chinese President Xi Jinping addressed the forum via video link, promising to work closely with African countries. Well, let's go live now to Dakar for the very latest on the FOCAC summit. Our reporter Nick Mudimba is standing by. Nick, of course, the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation resumes today against the backdrop of President Xi Jinping's message yesterday. Tell us, what's the latest on day two?
Thank you very much, Lindy. Indeed, this is the day two of the forum right here in Dakar, Senegal. And today we're having a myriad of discussions that will be going on today. And yesterday, Xi Jinping's president of China speech gave so many people hope in Africa. Of course, the delegation here was very impressed by just how various issues affecting Africa was touched. And when you talk about security, talk about innovation, you talk about healthcare, when you talk about agriculture, all those things touched. Lindy, I must say that the delegates here are very much impressed. So today the program will be very, very straightforward. The program is all about bilateral talks and coming up with the solutions to all those things that actually President Xi Jinping mentioned yesterday. So many of these things actually, as you are aware, affecting Africa were kind of sorted out yesterday. 1 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines leading to various African countries. And this will be a joint effort between China and Africa to make sure the COVID-19 pandemic is actually combated in the country. Something else, Lindy, security in the country, in the continent, rather, it's something that has been an issue. Various countries in Africa being affected by insurgency, sporadic insurgency, sporadic attacks. This is something that will also be touched here at the summit and the forum. So all in all, Lindy, there's something about good for Africa. The delegates from different African countries are very much impressed with what has been touched on here. But today, the focus will simply be the bilateral talks and coming up with solutions after the whole discussions.
And Nick, of course, you mentioned that things have certainly gotten off to a good start. Delegates very happy with Xi Jinping's speech. But tell us more what leaders there on the ground are saying to you in response to some of the key promises and pledges that have been made by President Xi Jinping in his opening address.
Sure, Lindy. At the very first of President Xi Jinping's speech, there was so much hope indeed. But at the end of the speech, there was so much assurity. And this is something that has given hope to so many Africans, especially the ministerial delegates here in Dakar, Senegal. So the speech was all about positivity towards Africa. The speech is all about giving Africa hope, something that indeed has been being waited for quite some time. When we talk about COVID-19, as I've mentioned, all these things will be sorted out, from the vaccines, 1 billion doses in Africa. Talk about agriculture, green lands, all sorted out, all in Africa. It being a food basket, of course, to the continent, agriculture will be given up that priority. person-to-person cultural relationship, this will actually be given a priority. So many things, and I can for sure tell you that indeed those at the forum here in Dakar, Senegal, are very happy to have had so many issues that are being tackled towards just for the betterment of Africa as a continent, and of course just to make sure Africa grows as a unit. This is something that indeed, Lindy, I must mention, I talked to some of the delegates here from different countries, from Chad, from Burkina Faso, all saying that indeed this is a wake of a new journey for Africa, because when 2 countries, 4 countries, 52 countries put their heads together, the impact will be immense. And the impact simply means that it's for the good of the continent, and of course for the good of everyone residing in the continent of Africa.
Indeed. Well, Nick, the Chinese foreign minister is also meeting his African counterparts as part of the FOCAC meetings. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Today's meeting will focus on now the decisions moving forward. Before now, of course, the next event date and the year will be announced. But today's meeting are the solutions. When you talk about solutions, that what was touched on yesterday by President Xi Jinping will now be cemented here, and finding ways on how this can actually be implemented. It is a very, very short event and precise. There'll also be a press conference at the end just to announce what has been deliberated, to announce when the next forum will be. And this, as I mentioned earlier, will be done in less than an hour, because there's so much going on around, so many delegates going back to their countries. But today, the meeting will come to a close with one theme. The theme, of course, of the forum is to strengthen bilateral ties and deepen relationship with Africa, and this is something that will conclude as a forum.
Well, thank you so much, Nick. We look forward to further updates from you. That's Nick Mudimba live for us in Dakar, Senegal. Now, President Xi also said China and African nations have forged a deep bond over the past 65 years of diplomatic relations, and laid out several measures to further improve relations. Yang Zhao has the details.
President Xi Jinping has made 4 proposals to further China-Africa ties, fight COVID-19 with solidarity, deepen practical cooperation, promote green development, and uphold equity and justice. She said people and their lives should be put first in the fight against COVID-19. He also stressed the importance of ensuring the accessibility and affordability of vaccines in Africa. Out of the 1 billion additional vaccine doses China has pledged to Africa, 600 million of those will be donations. China will also send 1,500 medical personnel and public health experts to the continent. China will share experience on poverty reduction, strengthen cooperation on the digital economy, and promote entrepreneurship by young Africans. She said the country will send 500 agricultural experts to Africa and aim to expand imports by opening green lanes for African agricultural exports. In terms of green development, President Xi said both sides should actively promote solar, wind, and other sources of renewable energy. He also said the world needs true multilateralism, and China and Africa both oppose intervention in domestic affairs, racial discrimination, and unilateral sanctions. The two sides are working on China-Africa Cooperation Vision 2035, which will lay the foundation for cooperation over the next 15 years. President Xi announced 9 programs as part of this vision. They are in the areas of medical and health, poverty reduction and agricultural development, trade, investment, digital innovation, green development, capacity building, cultural and people-to-people exchanges, and peace and security. President Xi also said China encourages its businesses to invest in no less than $1 billion in Africa in the next 3 years. Other moves include building or upgrading 10 schools in Africa and inviting 10,000 high-level African professionals to seminars and workshops. China also promised to support African countries' efforts to independently maintain regional security and fight terrorism. Yang Zhao, CGTN.
Well, To the coronavirus pandemic now, the World Health Organization warns the heavily mutated Omicron variant poses a very high risk of leading to a surge in global infections. The WHO chief sounded the alarm on Monday, saying an international agreement on pandemic control is needed.
The emergence of the highly mutated Omicron variant underlines just how perilous and precarious our situation is. South Africa and Botswana should be thanked for detecting, sequencing, and reporting this variant, not penalized. Indeed, Omicron demonstrates just why the world needs a new accord on pandemics. Our current system disincentivizes countries from alerting others to threats that will inevitably land on their shores.
Of course, a lot of concern globally about this new variant. Let's get more for you now from our correspondent Trent Murray. He joins us live from Berlin in Germany. Trent, G7 health ministers held an emergency meeting. Of course, they're seeing that many more countries across Europe and other parts of the world are now reporting cases of the new coronavirus variant Omicron. Do you think this might change their initial reaction to specifically lock out travelers from southern African nations?
Well, I think it certainly is causing a rethink, because really with each passing hour we are seeing more and more cases of this variant emerging in Europe, up to 14 cases now in Scotland, Spain reporting its first case overnight, and up to 13 players in Portugal linked to a professional football team have also been infected. So I think there are questions about whether this decision to close off flights to places like South Africa and Mozambique and Zimbabwe really is the right decision by Europe, given it's clear the variant is now spreading throughout Europe. Of course, those G7 health ministers, though, also joining the WHO in praising South Africa for its decision to publish these results, for working with the global health community and alerting the world to the presence of this variant. I'm sure that will in some ways be well received in Pretoria, but we also know that there is real anger in South Africa at this decision to close off the borders. Of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa saying on Sunday night that it's a decision not based on science and that it will do nothing to slow the spread of Omicron. In response to that, the European Union, well, they say the decision's been made because they're trying to buy time. They say they are just wanting to give the scientists the time, both here and in Africa, to work through the genome sequencing to try and find out just how much more infectious this variant could be, and all importantly, whether the current crop of vaccines that we are having used around the world will be effective in preventing it.
Indeed, still much to learn about this new variant. Thank you so much, Trent Murray, live for us there in Berlin. Now, in other news, diplomats sounded upbeat as talks resumed on saving the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Negotiators returned to Vienna for the first time since the summer when Iran held presidential elections. The European Union chair says he feels extremely positive, while admitting difficult issues have yet to be tackled. Iran says it's serious about reaching a fair deal after the US abandoned the accord 3 years ago. But Tehran continues to insist sanctions must first be dropped. China supports the demand. The US has said it is open to dropping some sanctions, but has questioned Iran's commitment. Well, that's it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thanks for watching.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Some African countries join the list of those banning travel from Southern Africa as affected nations cry foul. Sudan activists call for a million-man protest against PM Hamdok's deal with the military. And French citizens who fled Ethiopia arrive in Paris, but some are not happy they left. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also coming up on the program. Senegalese President Macky Sall adds his voice to calls opposing an end to fossil fuel finance. And in sports, Tunisia's women's team looking to fly high at the World Handball Championships in Spain. Well, we start with the coronavirus pandemic. Vaccine equity remains a point of contention in the fight against COVID-19 and its variants. Just 5 out of Africa's 54 countries are projected to hit the year-end target of vaccinating 40% of their populations. And the continent needs 275 million more jabs to achieve this goal. Africa has so far fully vaccinated just 6% of its people, while most high-income countries have already met the 40 percentile target. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says the Omicron variant is proof that this inequality needs to be addressed.
The emergence of the Omicron variant should be a wake-up call to the world that vaccine inequality cannot be allowed to continue. Until everyone is vaccinated, everyone will continue to be at risk. Until everyone is vaccinated, we should expect that more variants will keep on emerging.
Egypt's cabinet has halted direct flights between the North African nation and 7 African countries. The government says this measure aims to contain the entry and spread of the new coronavirus variant. Following the discovery of Omicron, Egypt has moved to include children aged between 12 to 15 in its ongoing vaccination drive. Here's CGTN's Adel Al-Mahroui with more.
Following the news about the discovery of the new Omicron variant, Egypt has terminated all direct flights linking it with 7 African countries. The viral containment move will see travel from South Africa, Lesotho, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Namibia and Eswatini halted. Although the step has been widely welcomed, some experts believe it might not be effective.
If it's actually just a couple of days, it would be very effective to close the borders and shut down the flights. But maybe it's actually spreading for a few weeks or months now. So if so, it will not going to be that effective. If it's actually spreading like the Delta variant, closing the borders will not going to be that effective, especially that we can see now cases in Asia, we can see a lot of cases in Europe and actually in the occupied lands as well.
Besides the travel curbs affecting the 7 countries, all other flights to and from Egypt will continue normally. So far, Cairo has not reported any cases of the new Omicron variant. There are other countries that have, however, reported 2 cases of people who allegedly passed through Egypt.
I'm not going to be surprised if we do have cases. Since it's actually the world is very open in terms of borders right now, a lot of cases are actually spreading worldwide. We are doing in Egypt a lot of gene sequencing to identify variants and the mutation in the virus.
Egyptian experts have warned that any cases of the new variant will be a setback for the country that has made strides in containing the coronavirus. Egypt has been consistently opening up social life, but some public health experts are advising people to now observe social distancing and to also wear face masks even when in open areas.
The terrifying part of the story is that we don't really know about its epidemiology clearly, so we can equip the people with the proper messages for protection. Whether the new variants of the virus have variated in the corona spikes which is going to be very, very serious because these spikes are the domain of the different varieties of the vaccines currently being used worldwide. This is one very important issue. It's going to be revealed within a couple of weeks and maximum after 4 weeks.
The Egyptian flight ban was made while Cairo hosted the Confederation of African Football's General Assembly, a meeting that brought together football delegations from all of Africa's 54 nations.
Although the efficacy of existing vaccines against the new variant is not clear yet, the Egyptian government decided to expand its inoculation campaign. Starting the 1st of December, for the first time, it will allow children 12 to 15 to get COVID-19 vaccines to reach its 40% of the population target before the year ends. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Meanwhile, Zimbabwe's government is tightening screening at its borders with Botswana and South Africa in the wake of the growing presence of the COVID-19 Omicron variant in the two neighboring countries. Farai Mokutuya has more.
Zimbabwe is yet to report any cases of the recently discovered COVID-19 Omicron variant, but has placed officials at its borders with Botswana and South Africa on high alert. Vice President and Health Minister, retired General Constantino Chiwenga, says testing and movement controls that have been in place for months are being intensified, especially as an increase in traffic is anticipated ahead of the end-of-year holidays. A spike in cases was experienced during and shortly after last year's festive season, something authorities are trying to avoid this time round. The national coordinator for the country's COVID-19 response says confirmatory testing, which was previously only done at the national level, has been decentralized to all districts, and this will improve efficiency in detecting cases. Travelers coming to Zimbabwe are required to have a negative PCR clearance certificate valid for no more than 48 hours. The country is also banking on its ongoing vaccination rollout to minimize the impact of a potential fourth wave. By November the 28th, more than 2.7 million people had been fully vaccinated. Farai Mokutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
And let's go to Sudan now, where anti-military protesters have already begun gathering in the capital, Khartoum, and other cities. A march is set to start in about an hour from now, with protesters potentially ending their march at the presidential palace. However, many fear this will lead to further confrontations between the police and protesters. Well, let's get to the very latest now. We're joined from Khartoum by our correspondent, Naba Mohideen. Naba, what is the latest on the protest action that has been called for today?
Hello. Yes, the protesters are gathering, and the protest probably will take place few minutes from now. Protesters are already gathering in different points, and there is calls to go to the presidential palace. So this is the main point. There is no heavy security deployments or police deployments, and the bridges are open, the streets are partially opened, but people are expecting unrest and riot because presidential palace for the authority is a red flag. It's a nationwide protest, not only in Khartoum, in different places. It's rejecting the political pact signed between Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok and the military, and above all, it's against the impunity. They want the punishment for the people who killed the protesters, but basically they are rejecting the political pact, and they want Abdullah Hamdok to resign and to withdraw from this political pact.
Well, of course, the Prime Minister Hamdok and the military are trying to consolidate their authority in the meantime. What's the latest on that?
Actually, the procedures or steps to consolidate their authority is very slow. Once the political pact was signed, they said they will form the new government very soon, and before that the military said the same, but till now there is a political gap and the government is not formed yet. But some sources told CGTN that the government will be formed within 2 days from now, probably tomorrow. In the same time, there is fears. There are fears if the protest continues, and the new name of the government is not satisfying for the protesters. The unrest will continue. So maybe the government now is fearing the reaction of forming a new government, because fundamentally the protesters are rejecting the whole political pact and the formation of the government. At the same time, the coalition of freedom and change is rejecting it. So yeah, we will see the government formed within 2 days, but we will see a reaction to it and more protest, and we will see very, very slow and sluggish in forming other councils and committees and prosecution and judiciary system, because still not every party is very satisfied with this political pact.
Indeed, the Prime Minister will have to tread very carefully. Well, thank you so much for that update, Naba Mohideen, live for us in Khartoum. Now let's go to the Senegalese capital of Dakar. The Forum on China-Africa Cooperation has entered its second day. FOCAC looks to find ways to further deepen China-Africa cooperation. Chinese President Xi Jinping addressed the forum via video link on Monday. President Xi stressed the importance of multilateralism and called on both sides to protect the interests of developing nations in international affairs. He announced that China will provide 1 billion additional doses of COVID-19 vaccines to African countries and will send 500 agricultural experts to the continent. Political leaders and experts within Africa have been expressing their thoughts on President Xi's speech.
Particularly the announcement that he has made today during the official opening of FOCAC 8th conference. It goes a long way in attempting to solve the African problem, and we welcome that very much. In particular, the offer to donate 1 billion vaccines.
I think we have to put our head together to work on all those proposals made by the heads of state. Nobody can live in an isolation today. We have to share also the values. The values means mankind.
It's promising, I think. It's promising. There is a lot to do to assist Africa in developing, in the bringing together, is showing solidarity, concrete solidarity to the African people, and demonstrating once again that the very nature of the relations between Africa and China is that of brotherly relations.
China invested heavily in agriculture. They still invest heavily in agriculture. And this was a method that was used for millions and millions of people in China to be taken out of poverty. So what they're introducing to us is a solution that we've seen has worked for the billions of people in China. And China is being very generous to literally bring the experts into Africa and work with us.
Now, beyond vaccine doses, the 8th ministerial meeting of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation will also see China step up vaccine cooperation with Africa. An existing project in Egypt serves as a case study for the potential magnitude of cooperation. The government's vaccination arm, Vaxera, has been working to produce millions of doses of China's Sinovac COVID-19 jab domestically. CGTN's Adel Al-Mahrawi visited Vaxera's COVID-19 production line.
Negotiations between the Egyptian government's vaccination arm Vaxera and Sinovac began in June 2020. After they signed a contract to produce the Chinese pharmaceuticals COVID-19 vaccine domestically in Egypt in April 2021, the establishment of this production line proceeded at phenomenal speed.
By May, we start receiving the raw material, engaged with the arrival of an expert coming from Sinovac, which is our partner. We work very hard with the Chinese party, and the working hour per day, it's exceeding more than 18 hours per day.
Egypt produced its first 1 million doses in July. Vaxera now says it has produced about 28 million jabs out of its end-of-year target of 40 million. The production line here replicates to a great extent that of Sinovac's in China. A high-tech water station feeds the manufacturing facility with clean water ready for human injection and filtered hot water to sterilize the vials before pouring the processed raw biomaterial in them. Before it proceeds to the next step, Each vial has to be visually inspected to detect any unwanted residual within the vaccine.
After packaging the vaccine into the vials, they come here to be labeled. Labeling is quite crucial for the production process, as each batch has a unique code which can be later on traced in case of any inspections or contamination detected.
China is promising full transfer of technology to Egypt. Vaxera says that it should be capable of producing the raw biomaterial of the Chinese jab by mid-2022.
It will be for us a big opportunity because now we have an initiative for the African continent that by 2040 they have a strategic objective that 60% of the African continent needs from the vaccine. They have initiative to be locally produced in the continent, and now they are planning to choose 5 centers acting as a hub, and Egypt one of the center potentially now on the table, inshallah, to be selected.
This facility can produce up to 350,000 jabs a day. As Egypt sees a potential growth in the industry, it is planning massive expansions for local vaccine production.
We had a site in 6 October City in about 60,000 meters square, and we had a facility there for the future expansion, and the capacity will be 6 times more the capacity than here. So this is for the future expansion, and the objective is to satisfy the African continents, not only from the COVID vaccine, but also for other types of the vaccine.
When operation begins in the new Vaxera facility, Egypt will have the ability to produce 1 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines annually, all produced with the same quality control and assurances as certified by the Chinese pharmaceutical Sinovac.
After this entire process, when the vial is ready, it gets stored here in cool temperature before distribution. This might not appear as much, but right now, there are over 5 million COVID-19 jabs produced domestically and proudly in Egypt. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Right, we bring you some breaking news now coming out of Uganda. The Ugandan Defence Forces spokesperson has announced that they have launched joint air and artillery strikes with their DRC counterparts against DRC rebel forces known as the ADF. The two sides have been blaming the ADF for attacks on military camps in the DRC, as well as the recent suicide bombings in Uganda's capital, Kampala. We will bring you more on this story as it unravels. But now, though, time for a short break. Do stay with us. Still ahead, French citizens who fled Ethiopia arrive in Paris. Some are not happy about leaving Addis Ababa.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
The tents here, bottles are being thrown as they do so.
There are about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Tear gas, so it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from the front
clear
line.
View of this front line position.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has spoken from the front lines once again. He says the military will finish their job in no time fighting against Tigrayan rebels. He has called on those fighting alongside the TPLF to surrender before it's too late. So far, state media is reporting that Ethiopia's army has retaken the town of Chifra in the Afar region after Abiy headed to the war front last week. Abiy's government has been fighting against forces from Tigray for more than a year. Well, French families have landed in Paris after France repatriated some of its nationals from the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. A French foreign ministry official said they chartered special flights to repatriate their nationals. Last week, France urged its nationals to leave Ethiopia without delay as the conflict there escalates. Now, according to Ethiopia's state-run broadcaster, government forces have retaken the town of Chifra, and this becomes the first major seizure from Tigrayan forces since Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed went to the front lines. Many of the French nationals who arrived at Charles de Gaulle Airport described Addis Ababa as generally calm when they left.
We were told to leave and that we didn't have a choice. It was the last flight, and if not, we had to put on paper that the French state could not be held responsible for us. We left everything behind, our house, we have a life there, we have jobs there, and we get here but we don't know where to stay. I'm paid in Ethiopian currency. I don't know what to give the children. But in Addis Ababa, everything's going fine. Honestly, it's all fine. I don't understand.
Mais à 10, tout va bien. Sincèrement, tout va bien. Je comprends pas.
Parce qu'il y a beaucoup d'incertitudes.
There's lots of uncertainty. We're not too sure what's going on. 5 to 6 days ago, the rebels seemed very close to Addis Ababa, but we've had little information the past few days. And the French embassy asked us to go home as fast as possible, so we followed their instruction. Some of my colleagues have decided to stay, but it's a small minority. The great majority of my colleagues have come back to France.
A 6-story Chinese-funded parliament building project in Zimbabwe is now nearing its completion on the outskirts of the capital, Harare. China's Shanghai Construction Group is constructing the building that is set to replace the 100-seat structure currently being used by lawmakers. Here's more now with CGTN's Joy Kirukijuma.
The new parliament building in Zimbabwe has a sitting capacity of 650. And on top of this, will have extra conferencing facilities and larger spaces for offices and parking. The structure is part of a larger infrastructure project that includes the construction of a new city in Mount Hampden on the outskirts of Harare.
We express our profound gratitude to the Chinese government and people for their continued support of our various developmental programs. We commend the Belt and Road Initiative, under which infrastructure development projects such as this one are being undertaken in emerging economies. We have always thought that we are landlocked, but as a result of the Belt and Road Initiative, we now realized that we are land-linked, not locked.
The project has been run through local partnerships that have enabled workers to benefit from the knowledge and skills transfer.
We hired local construction technicians and they formed a good pair with us and also formed our very good helpers. In this process, we imparted construction technical knowledge and construction skills, which allowed many local workers to improve their labor skills. I think that after the completion of our project, these construction technicians will be able to play a greater role in the construction of other projects and the construction of the new urban area in Harare. On the other hand, through working here, they will be able to increase their family income and make their lives better.
You know, Chinese they are skillful. So we learn a lot practically, intelligence. We learn a lot since we started working here. And now, even after finishing this project, we can do. We are now able to do even something which is construct even a very big project, but because we learn from this project, so I can say here we learn a lot.
The Parliament building is projected to be completed early next year and will be handed over to Zimbabwean officials by April. This is another successful step in solidifying Sino-Africa relations. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
And coming up in your business news. The Africa Development Bank postpones the investment summit scheduled for Wednesday over Omicron concerns. And Senegalese President Macky Sall adds his voice to calls opposing an end to fossil fuel finance.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines.
You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
In your business news, the African Development Bank has postponed to an unspecified date its investment forum that was due to start in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire on Wednesday. Bank President Akinwumi Adesina announced on Monday that the decision was the result of health concerns and travel restrictions imposed by the Omicron coronavirus variant. Several heads of state, including from South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Tanzania, Rwanda and Mozambique, were expected to attend. Also expected was a delegation from the United States that included investors representing more than $1.6 trillion in assets under management. The event was to run from December 1st to 3rd. The AFDB said the forum had 118 deals in its pipeline from all 8 founding members with an investment value of over $110 billion. Adesina says conversations around the funding of projects will continue behind the scenes. Now, Senegalese President Macky Sall has opposed ending financing for fossil fuel extraction, saying the move would deal a fatal blow to emerging economies. Speaking during a China-Africa Forum meeting outside Dakar, President Sall said the timing was wrong. A small group of countries, including the US and France, have previously agreed at the COP26 Climate Summit to end financing for unabated fossil fuel projects overseas by the end of 2022. It was declared at COP26 that countries would accelerate efforts towards phasing out unabated coal power and inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. Senegal hopes to pump its first barrels of gas and oil discovered off its Atlantic coast within 3 years.
At a time when several African countries are preparing to exploit their significant gas resources, stopping funding for the gas sector on the pretext that gas is also a fossil fuel, without taking into account the fact that it is also and above all a clean energy, will be a fatal blow to our efforts to emerge.
We have seen how some countries have started restricting travel to other countries, thus damaging their economies and particularly sectors of their economies that rely on the travel of people around the world.
Nigeria's proposed national carrier plans to take to the skies by April 2022 after years of preparation. The airline's revival was first mooted in 2018. It will be run as a public-private partnership with the government owning a small stake. CGTN's Deji Bademosi has the details.
If everything goes according to plan, Nigeria Air will hit the sky in April. Outlining the ownership structure of the airline, the country's Minister of Aviation says Nigeria Air will be effectively a Nigerian airline.
So 5% is the maximum equity the government will take. Then 46% will be owned by Nigerian entrepreneurs 46%. So if you add that, it's 51%. So 51% majority shareholding by Nigerians. And then 49% will be held by strategic equity partner or partners that will be sourced during the procurement phase, which is the next phase. This airline, if started and within the first few years, will generate about 70,000 jobs. These 70,000 jobs, they are higher than the total number of civil servants that we have in the country.
The operators of the airline plan to start with 3 wet lease aircraft and ultimately push the number in the fleet to 30. Also being planned along with the airline is an MRO for aircraft maintenance and a leasing company as well. The country's aviation industry has generally warmed up to the initiative.
I would have loved that we have a greater margin in terms of majority control up to 60% and leave a foreign partner with about 40. But the important thing is that Nigeria should have a majority stake, and 51 is a majority stake. And 5% government equity, I have no problem about that. Because one, it doesn't give the government opportunity to control the airline. But the airline needs it because it gives the airline a sovereign cover.
Nigeria's aviation minister says talks are going on with potential investors who may be interested in acquiring stakes in the airline. Arrangements are also being made to source for strategic foreign partners as well.
One key factor that will turn things around will be the technical partner. If Nigerians know the technical partner, one of these big boys that come in as a technical partner, they will, yes, the technical partner is so critical to investors coming. If you don't have a good technical partner, forget it.
Nigeria does not have a fantastic history of running a national carrier. Previous national carrier known as Nigeria Airways operated for over 4 decades before it crumbled under the weight of debt and mismanagement in 2003. The government is hoping that by allowing a majority private sector stake in Nigeria Air, it would avoid the mistakes that led to the death of its predecessor. Deji Badimasi, CGTN, Lagos.
Tanzania is aiming for economic growth of 8% per year over the next 5 years as it seeks to recover from the damage caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The country's financial experts met in the nation's capital, Dodoma, to work on a range of recovery proposals. CGTN's Isaac Lukando has the details.
The focus of the 40th anniversary of the Tanzania Financial Institutions Conference is on how to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Low levels of lending to the private sector have raised concern that the country's target of growing the economy to 8% in the next 5 years might not be achieved.
The level of credit to the private sector in Tanzania continues to be low, with an annual growth of 4.3%. So this is not a healthy situation, and I would request the financial institutions to lend more to the private sector.
Tanzania's economic growth fell to 4.8% last year from a high of 6.8% the year before as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The central bank believes lending to players in the country's agricultural sector might turn things around.
We've started a special $434 million fund, which will be used to loan to banks and financial institutions at 3%, so that these institutions in turn loan to the agriculture sector at an interest rate of not more than 10%.
To remove the shackles of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government says it wants more of its 60 million citizens vaccinated against the disease. It also plans to use a recent $567 million loan from the International Monetary Fund to revive sectors such as tourism, which were most affected by the pandemic. According to the World Bank, 500,000 Tanzanians fell into poverty last year as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Tanzanian government believes innovative thinking is the only way to revive the economy and lift its citizens out of poverty. Tanzania's central bank says it plans to introduce a digital currency. The president says this type of innovation will help the country's economy thrive long after COVID-19 is gone.
The government is finalizing policy and strategy to grow the economy through digitalization, but also to increase our efforts in research and innovation.
This financial year, the government expects the economy to grow to 5%. With new strategies in place, it hopes to rise above its current lower middle income status. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Let's take a short break. Your sports news coming up next. Coming up, Tunisia's women's team looking to fly high at the World Handball Championships in Spain.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In your sports news, Tunisia is looking forward to flying Africa's flag high at the 2021 World Women's Handball Championships that run from the 2nd to the 19th of December in Spain. Local and international players in the squad for the 25th edition of the tournament have converged in the coastal city of Nabuel for a 10-day closed training camp. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi reports.
This is the 10th participation for Tunisia in the World Women's Handball Championship. The Tunisian Handball Federation invited former and new players to share their experience on the world's top tournament.
The Sports Ministry and the Handball Federation are doing their best and providing all the necessary means for our girls to show a good performance in the World Championship. We are not participating for the sake of marking our presence. The objective of the Tunisian women's handball team is to win matches and qualify for the second round.
Head coach Muaz Ben Amor says the team could not invite all its foreign-based players until recently, when the health and sports authorities lifted the ban on public and private gatherings. Now that the COVID-19 situation is stable in Tunisia, international players have joined the locals.
The preparation for the World Championship kicked off in September, and the first training camp was held in October. We were planning to gather in the summer, but the health situation was unstable with the lockdown and the ban on sports activities in July and August. We made a local camp at home, then preparations in France. Now, the professional players have joined the squad for a 10-day maximum period before the tournament.
Defender Sundas Hashana and attacker Sumaya Belhaj are among the star players in the Tunisian team, and they are ready for Spain.
This is not the first time that we play in a difficult group. We played Denmark in the past, but all the teams are strong. Yes, the national squad is young and inexperienced, but we are all determined to win our matches and to raise Tunisia's flag high.
This tournament will be challenging. Denmark is a strong team. Korea is a serious adversary. We know Congo very well because we defeated them in the quarterfinals of the last African Championship. Yet we must be vigilant and play to score and to win from our first match.
7 foreign-based players have joined the team that features 10 who are aged under 20. It will be their first experience in the World Championship. In October 2018, at a congress in Doha, Qatar, the International Handball Federation announced that the World Championship would be expanded from 24 teams to 32 teams from 2021 onwards. The Netherlands will be the defending champions after winning for the first time in 2019. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
To football now, and it was a busy night at the Ballon d'Or Awards in Paris, where Lionel Messi